My cousin got laid off last month from a tech company where she'd been a solid performer for 5 years. The email flatly blamed restructuring to align with our AI strategy.
That phrase is everywhere right now. Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're breaking down how AI is genuinely changing jobs in America right now in 2026.
We're looking past the scary headlines to see what's actually happening on the ground. Let's start with the hard numbers. Employers announced over 97,000 job cuts in May alone, the highest for that month since the pandemic.
Remarkably, AI was cited as the direct reason for nearly 40% of those May cuts. To put that in perspective, back in January, AI was only blamed for about 7%. By June, it held at 31%, making it the top reason for corporate layoffs 4 months in a row.
This isn't a sudden spike out of nowhere. It's a curve that has been climbing steadily since 2024, when AI was linked to under 1% of cuts. It feels less like a random panic and more like a genuine structural shift.
But we have to ask, is AI genuinely doing the work, or is it just a convenient scapegoat? Many labor researchers point out that companies overhired during the pandemic. Now they're correcting those numbers and framing it as an AI transition because it sounds much better to Wall Street investors.
Absolutely. Analysts call it AI washing, dressing up ordinary corporate cost-cutting as cutting-edge innovation. In fact, a recent study of 350 companies that aggressively cut staff this year showed zero improvement in their actual financial returns compared to companies that held steady.
Exactly. Some companies are already overcorrecting and hitting a wall. Take the fintech company Klarna. They replaced hundreds of customer service agents with an AI chatbot, only to quietly walk it back and rehire humans when the software couldn't handle complex customer complaints.
Shifting, let's look at who's actually bearing the brunt of this transition. It isn't senior executives, it's entry-level and junior roles.
Because junior work tends to be more repeatable and rules-based?
Senior professionals are harder to replace because their value lies in human judgment, relationship building, and deep experience. Because of this, graduate postings have plummeted by over 40% in some trackers since 2022. The bigger, quieter story isn't mass firings, it's that companies simply aren't hiring juniors in the first place.
I have a friend who graduated last year in marketing, applied to over 200 roles and got maybe 5 interviews. She kept seeing postings demanding AI-fluent candidates for entry-level positions. It feels like the bottom rung of the career ladder is being pulled up.
That creates a massive long-term talent pipeline problem. If companies stop training juniors today, where do the senior leaders come from in 10 years? A rough month of layoffs can bounce back, but a missing generation of on-the-job training is a much harder problem to fix.
Interestingly, a recent Gallup survey found that workers who never use AI were actually more likely to be laid off than regular AI users.
So the real risk isn't that AI replaces you, but that a human who knows how to leverage AI replaces you?
Exactly. It's a crucial distinction. Meanwhile, the broader U.S. labor market hasn't collapsed. Overall payrolls are still growing, and unemployment remains historically manageable. The disruption is highly concentrated in specific pockets.
Because of this concentration, local governments are stepping in. California is currently reviewing worker protection laws, considering bills that would require a 90-day notice for AI-driven layoffs and full disclosure of the automated systems involved. Colorado also rolled out laws explicitly targeting algorithmic discrimination in hiring.
Agreed. It's a vital reminder that technology isn't just an unstoppable force of nature happening to us. The outcome is entirely shaped by the conscious choices that employers, workers, and lawmakers make right now.
If you're early in your career or feeling the pressure of these shifting tools, the data shows you aren't imagining the squeeze. The trick isn't running away from the technology, it's focusing heavily on building the human skills, exceptions management, and critical thinking that the software simply cannot replicate.
Well said. We'll dive deeper into specific tactical career survival skills in our next episode. Thanks for joining us, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below.
Let's put real faces on these numbers, because statistics don't capture what this actually feels like on a Tuesday morning when your badge stops working.
Agreed. Let's start with your cousin's story. She was in operations at a tech company, 5 years there, stellar reviews, then out of nowhere, her entire team was cut except for 2 people.
Right. The work didn't vanish. It wasn't AI took her job. It was 2 humans plus software are now expected to do what 6 humans used to do. That is the actual corporate playbook right now, shrinking the headcount while squeezing the survivors.
I saw the exact same thing happen to a friend in customer support. They rolled out a chatbot to handle simple tickets like password resets and cut a third of the staff.
Did the chatbot actually deliver?
Sure, for routine inquiries, sure. But because the easy tickets were automated, my friend was left handling only the most complex, messy, and furious customer escalations all day long. The job didn't get easier, it got significantly more stressful. When AI automates the predictable middle, humans are left exclusively with the intense emotional labor.
That maps closely to logistics, too. A neighbor of mine works dispatch for a trucking firm. Software now optimizes the routes automatically. His team shrank from 6 dispatchers down to 2. He survived, but he feels a bizarre mix of relief and intense survivor's guilt, constantly bracing for the next round of cuts.
Shifting, we don't want this to feel entirely bleak, though, because some people are running toward the disruption and winning. I know a content writer whose company started using generative tools to draft initial ad copy. He skipped the panic phase, mastered the tools, and became the guy who could edit and direct the software so fast that his personal output increased 5-fold. He got promoted 8 months later.
He changed his relationship to the technology, treating it like an intern rather than a threat. We see a similar silver lining for a friend's dad in his late 50s who works in accounting. Automation took over his basic bookkeeping and data entry. Instead of losing his job, he's actually relieved. It eliminated the tedious spreadsheet grinding and freed him up to do high-value financial strategy directly with clients.
It really depends on the sector. In manufacturing, robotics and automated quality control have been expanding for years. Younger factory workers often retrain to monitor and maintain the multi-million-dollar machines, which usually comes with a pay bump. But older workers close to retirement frequently opt to walk away entirely rather than learn a new technical language.
I agree. Now compare that to healthcare. A nurse I talked to uses an AI tool that listens to patient interactions and drafts her charting documentation. Because the healthcare sector faces systemic staffing shortages, hospitals aren't using that efficiency to cut staff. They're using it to cut paperwork and prevent burnout.
Because corporate motives are so unpredictable, workers are organizing differently. Media and tech unions are no longer just bargaining for wages. They are drawing hard lines on AI guardrails in their contracts, demanding mandatory human review before automated content is published, alongside guaranteed retraining budgets.
I agree. Laid-off workers are also vetting employers differently. A product designer told me he asks point blank in interviews, how does this company use technology to scale human capability rather than just scale cost savings?
That's the ultimate filter for 2026. Workforce retraining programs are shifting away from teaching people how to code and focusing heavily on how to apply these systems. You don't need to build the engine, you just need to be an expert driver.
The most durable skill left is critical thinking. The software can generate 1,000 answers in seconds, but it still takes a discerning human eye to look at the output and say, this part is brilliant, but that part is completely wrong. Your value lies in your judgment, your empathy, and your taste.
Well said. Up next, we're going to tackle the big macroeconomic debate. Is this a permanent labor shift, or are we living inside an overhyped corporate bubble? Stay with us.
Let's really dig into this debate now, because separating the corporate spin from reality changes how worried people should actually be about their own paychecks. Before we look at the hard data, can we talk about the media for a second? The headlines shape our collective panic. A dramatic headline like AI wipes out 10,000 jobs gets infinite clicks. A nuanced headline like company restructured due to bad projections mentioned AI to impress Wall Street gets entirely ignored. We aren't downplaying real struggles, but fear spreads exponentially faster than nuance. Look at this striking discrepancy in the data. A massive Gallup survey found that only about 1% of laid-off workers reported that AI or automation was the explicit reason they lost their jobs. Most were told it was standard organizational downsizing.
Wait, 1%? That completely contradicts the front-page news.
Right, but here's the twist. Analysts tracking the tech sector specifically estimate that AI played a role in nearly half of those recent cuts. Why the massive gap? Because companies tell two entirely different stories depending on who is listening.
Because investors reward the AI narrative. We've seen stock prices jump over 20% simply because a company announced AI-attributed layoffs, even when analysts pointed out the firm was just bloated and needed to cut costs anyway. AI has become the ultimate bulletproof corporate excuse.
But let's look at the other side of the ledger. The disruption isn't purely subtraction. There is real addition happening, often in the places people least expect. Boston Consulting Group shows that while white-collar knowledge work hours are highly exposed to automation, the massive computing power required for AI is triggering an infrastructure boom.
They project that roughly 500,000 net new jobs will be required by the end of the decade just to build and support the clean energy grid and data centers needed for this tech. We are talking about massive demand for construction workers, engineers, linemen, and electricians.
I actually know a former office manager who saw the writing on the wall, left her desk job, and took an electrician apprenticeship specifically focused on data center builds. She's making significantly more money now, and her job security is ironclad. There is something beautifully poetic about high-tech software creating a massive bull market for the most hands-on physical human trades.
That's a crucial distinction. Boston Consulting Group predicts up to 15% of U.S. jobs could be heavily impacted over the next 5 years, but labor economists emphasize that task automation does not equal job elimination.
Right. Your entire job doesn't disappear. The tedious, repeatable 30% of it gets absorbed by software, forcing the role to reshape itself around the remaining 70% that requires human judgment.
Geoffrey Hinton, often called the Godfather of AI, flagged a major caveat here. He noted that while the tech expands wealth and productivity, the real danger is systemic inequality. The wealth stays at the top while entry-level pipelines dry up.
Hinton also made a profoundly human point regarding solutions like universal basic income. He argued that just sending people a monthly check is inadequate because it ignores the loss of identity, dignity, and purpose that humans get from actual execution and contribution.
That hits home. When my cousin was laid off, the financial strain was incredibly stressful, but the identity hit, the feeling that a piece of software made her skills redundant, was psychologically much tougher.
Which is why the smartest move right now isn't trying to out-procrastinate the technology or waiting for a government safety net. The move is adaptation. Whether that means leveraging state-subsidized community college programs or learning how to use these tools inside your current role, the goal is fluency.
If you're sitting at your desk feeling a low hum of anxiety watching these corporate restructurings, you're not crazy. The landscape is genuinely shifting. But remember, the software can give an answer, but it still takes a human to know if it's the right answer. Your taste, your critical thinking, and your adaptability are your greatest leverage.
In our next part, we're going to get highly tactical. We're breaking down the exact matrix of who is most exposed, who is safest, and the specific skills that make you completely irreplaceable.
See you in the next part.
In the last part, we covered the macro view. Now let's get hyper-specific. Who is actually taking the hardest hits right now?
Let's start with Gen Z. We teased this earlier, but the entry-level reality right now is wild.
It really is. Graduate job postings have dropped sharply since 2022. We're looking at a contraction of over 40% in major tech and corporate tracking.
That's not a minor market correction. That's nearly cutting the entry-level market in half.
Exactly. And if you track the job finding rate for young workers, specifically in AI-exposed roles, it's a steep downward curve compared to just a couple of years ago.
I'm seeing this in my own family. My little brother graduated this spring. Finance degree, decent GPA, did everything right.
Let me guess, a brutally quiet inbox?
4 months of radio silence. He keeps calling me frustrated because every single entry-level posting asks for 2 to 3 years of experience.
Look, that's always been a corporate joke, but lately it feels less like a joke and more like a hard wall.
Agreed, because the math changed. Companies used to hire juniors to handle the manual formatting, basic data sorting, and first drafts, using that grunt work to train them up. Now, software does the grunt work in seconds.
This goes back to that Columbia University analysis we mentioned. The technology doesn't replace the senior leaders who hold the strategy and client relationships. It just lets them automate around the entry-level layer.
So the bottom rung of the career ladder gets sawed off right when a new generation is trying to step onto it.
And here's the ultimate irony. Look at these job descriptions. Corporations are begging for AI-fluent grads, but full-time corporate work is exactly where you traditionally build professional fluency.
Dry, classic chicken and egg problem.
Personal? My cousin's daughter just dealt with this in digital marketing. She put out over 150 customized applications.
Oh man, what was the return?
Flat? 8 responses. Total. Not 8 interviews, 8 automated emails saying they received it or moved on. She eventually stopped waiting and started pitching herself as a freelance social media manager to local businesses just to avoid a massive gap on her resume.
That's becoming the new normal. Instead of one clean, predictable first corporate job, grads are patching together an ecosystem of gigs, internships, and micro-contracts. It completely redefines what starting a career feels like.
Serious? But think about the structural debt companies are building here. If you stop bringing in and training juniors today, where do your senior directors come from in 10 years?
That pipeline problem is honestly much scarier long-term than any single quarter's hiring metrics. Though, to be fair, a few forward-thinking firms are trying to engineer a fix.
Curious, what are they doing?
A handful of the major consulting and tech firms are piloting these apprenticeship models. Instead of skipping the junior tier, they bring grads in and train them as AI directors from day one. They're explicitly teaching them how to review and edit machine outputs rather than doing the manual labor.
Approving? Right, they're redesigning the gateway instead of closing it.
So if you're a recent grad sitting in front of a spreadsheet of 200 rejections thinking you're broken, stop. The system itself is rerouting.
We should also note that this ripples backward into college internships, too. The on-ramp before the on-ramp is getting crowded.
Totally. I talked to a university career counselor last week who said their internal internship database has never been this hyper-competitive. Because AI handles the baseline data entry and research, companies are shrinking the size of their intern cohorts. The students who do get picked are expected to hit the ground running with an advanced tech stack.
Raising the bar right at the exact point people have the least leverage to clear it.
Personally, I mentored a college junior last summer, and my advice to her was blunt. Do not treat AI tools like a cheating mechanism. Treat them like a core requirement. Build a portfolio that doesn't just show your writing or analysis, but explicitly documents how you used prompting and AI workflows to get the result.
Did it land?
Interested? Did it land?
She calls it her human plus machine deck. It got her an agency internship 2 months later. The hiring manager told her it was the only portfolio that actually understood the current reality of the workplace. That's a blueprint right there. But we have to acknowledge that this blueprint is significantly harder to access if you're first-generation college student or working through a community college program.
Because you don't have the luxury of an insider network telling you how the corporate goalposts just shifted.
Exactly. The information asymmetry compounds the hiring gap. People see requires AI experience on a job board and assume they need an engineering degree, so they don't even apply.
when the reality is the company just wants to know you aren't afraid of a prompting window and have solid critical thinking. Let's pivot there, because this fear isn't just hitting grads, it's moving straight up into the white-collar knowledge economy.
Let's unpack the core of knowledge work, because this is where the genuine middle-class anxiety lives.
Right, roles in customer support, back-office administration, junior data analysis, legal document review, and baseline software engineering, all heavily flagged in risk models.
And the common thread here isn't the job title, it's the task profile. If a significant portion of your daily job involves repeatable, rules-based tasks, taking data from point A, adjusting it based on a set formula, and putting it in point B, you are in the automation zone.
A close friend of mine is a mid-level software engineer, and he described the shift perfectly. He said AI coding assistants now instantly generate the standard, boilerplate code that used to take him 2 hours to write by hand.
Which sounds amazing for productivity, but what happened to the team size?
His department went from 8 engineers down to 5 over an 18-month period. Same software output, but 3 salaries completely removed from the balance sheet.
So the narrative isn't the robot took my job. The narrative is the technology made the remaining humans so efficient that management only needs 5 of them instead of 8.
Exactly. And his day-to-day job changed completely. He spends less time creatively writing code and more time auditing, debugging, and correcting what the AI spits out. He went from a creator to an editor.
We're seeing that exact same structural edit on Wall Street. Major investment banks are restructuring their analyst programs. The grueling 80-hour-a-week task of building foundational financial models and pitch books is being heavily streamlined.
Which is wild, because those prestigious banking and corporate legal tracks used to be considered the ultimate bulletproof career bets.
Think about junior paralegals. They used to spend weeks in basement archives or digital databases doing discovery and document review. Now, an enterprise LLM, large language model, can ingest 10,000 legal documents and flag the relevant anomalies in 10 minutes. The lawyer doesn't disappear, but the army of juniors beneath them shrinks.
It's happening in customer service, too, but with a really tough human twist. I know someone managing support for a major consumer app. They rolled out an advanced conversational AI for Tier 1 tickets, simple refunds, password resets, tracking updates.
Let me guess, layoffs followed.
Exactly. They cut about 35% of the frontline staff. But here's the kicker for the workers who stayed. Because the AI handles all the easy, straightforward tickets, the remaining humans only get the complex, high-friction, emotionally volatile escalations.
Oh, that's exhausting. So your reward for surviving the layoff is that your daily workload becomes a non-stop gauntlet of stressed-out, angry customers.
Exactly. The emotional labor tax goes through the roof. And look at the corporate sentiment behind this. Labor economists note that roughly half of the corporations adopting AI are prioritizing pure cost-cutting and workforce reduction over augmenting their existing workers.
That is a massive distinction. It means the disruption isn't just an inevitable law of physics or technology, it's a reflection of corporate strategy and priority.
But look, let's take a breath here, because it's not an across-the-board wipeout. There are massive sectors of the economy right now that are acting as absolute safe harbors.
Let's talk about where the leverage is. If you want a role that current technology genuinely struggles to touch, you have to look at the physical, hands-on, high-judgment world. First up, the skilled trades. Electricians, plumbers, HVAC technicians, carpentry specialists.
Because a software model can write a brilliant essay, but it cannot navigate a cramped crawl space, diagnose a unique plumbing leak in a 100-year-old house, and physically rewire a breaker box simultaneously. The spatial and tactile complexity is immense.
I mentioned that former office manager who pivoted to an electrician apprenticeship. She specifically aligned her training with high-voltage systems for data center construction.
Interesting. How is that market looking?
She's working 6 days a week and making more than her old supervisor. Because here is the great paradox of the AI boom. The software requires an absolute ocean of physical infrastructure. We need massive data centers, hyper-advanced cooling systems, and an entirely upgraded power grid to run these models.
That is brilliant. The most abstract, high-tech code in human history is driving a massive bull market for physical blue-collar grit. Goldman Sachs research shows that meeting this computing power demand will require a massive surge in construction workers, grid engineers, and linemen.
Now, let's be honest. It's tough, exhausting physical work. It's not a magic pill for everyone. But in terms of pure job security and market demand, it's ironclad.
The other massive sanctuary is healthcare, specifically direct face-to-face patient care.
I have a friend who is an ICU nurse, and her hospital recently integrated AI clinical documentation. It listens to her patient interactions and automatically charts them into the medical record.
Did that trigger nursing staff cuts?
The exact opposite. The hospital is desperately understaffed. All that tool did was save her 2 hours of exhausting paperwork at the end of a grueling shift, allowing her to actually focus on patient care. In healthcare, efficiency gains are being used to combat systemic burnout, not to eliminate headcount.
Because at the end of the day, when a human being is sick or vulnerable, automated empathy doesn't cut it. We demand a human face, human touch, and human clinical judgment.
So, if you look at the entire landscape we just mapped out, a very clear pattern emerges. The workers who are safest are either grounded in the physical world or anchored heavily by deep institutional experience, complex relationships, and critical judgment.
The data repeatedly shows that professionals who actively learn to use these tools as a force multiplier are significantly safer than those who ignore them. The threat isn't AI replacing you. It's a professional who knows how to leverage AI replacing you.
Perfect place to pause. Now that we've mapped the entire battlefield, the exposure and the safety zones, we are ready to look at what's being born.
In Part 3, we are looking at the net new jobs, the emerging industries, and the exact skills you can build starting tomorrow afternoon to stay completely irreplaceable.
So far, we've mapped out the pressure points and the safe harbors. Now let's turn the page and look at what is actually being built, because this isn't a story of pure subtraction. New economic value means new architecture, and new architecture means new roles.
Right. The labor market isn't just shrinking, it's mutating. Positions like prompt engineers, AI integration managers, and algorithmic trainers didn't even exist on job boards a few years ago.
And what's fascinating is that these aren't necessarily hyper-technical data science jobs. I was reading a profile on an enterprise media company that recently hired a team of AI quality reviewers. Their entire job is to audit machine-generated copy and data for accuracy, tone, and brand safety before it goes out to clients.
What was their background? Did they have computer science degrees?
No, they were traditional copy editors and investigative researchers. It's the exact same core human skill, impeccable judgment, skepticism, and attention to detail, just redirected toward a different kind of draft.
That tracks with the broader macro data. The World Economic Forum actually projects that while automation could displace around 92 million jobs globally, it's on track to help create roughly 170 million net new roles.
So on paper, it's a massive net positive. But we have to be completely honest here. That transition isn't seamless. There is a massive structural friction gap. A front desk administrator who loses a job on Tuesday can't just step into a cloud security auditing role on Wednesday morning.
Exactly. It's not just about jobs disappearing, it's a massive skills mismatch problem. But looking at where the money is moving gives us a map. Take data center infrastructure, which we touched on earlier. We are seeing a massive physical hiring boom there.
500,000 net new jobs by the end of the decade just to support the grid and power requirements. That is a staggering amount of physical blue-collar labor.
It's the ultimate irony of the software age. The virtual world is completely dependent on heavy industry, steel, copper, and concrete.
Adding, cybersecurity is seeing a parallel surge for the exact same reason. Every time a company deploys an internal AI model or hooks an LLM up to their corporate data, they are essentially creating a massive new surface area for hackers to exploit.
I was talking to an IT consultant last month who completely rerouted his career. He left general network support to focus exclusively on AI vulnerability auditing. He told me the market demand was so intense that his firm completely subsidized his advanced certifications just to keep him from leaving.
That's a crucial data point. It shows that some companies are choosing to retrain their existing staff internally because hiring specialized talent from the outside is simply too expensive right now.
It's happening in advanced manufacturing too. Factories that introduce automated assembly line workers are transitioning assembly line workers into predictive maintenance tech roles.
So the human worker isn't replaced by the machine. The human worker is shifted up one level to become the person who troubleshoots, fixes, and optimizes the machine. And historically, those technician roles command a significantly higher wage than the manual labor they replaced.
There's also an entirely fresh corporate layer emerging around AI compliance and governance.
What does that look like in practice? Is it legal work?
It's a hybrid. As states like California and Colorado pass strict algorithmic transparency laws, companies are hiring trust and safety officers. These are people who review internal AI models to ensure they aren't introducing hiring bias, leaking consumer data, or violating compliance standards. It's a brand new professional discipline.
Let's follow that thread directly into the specific industries that are actively expanding their payrolls right now to keep up with the shift. If you look at the hiring heat maps right now, the sectors adding headcount aren't necessarily the ones making the front page news. Let's start with energy and utilities.
Because data centers don't run on wishes, they run on massive, continuous megawatts. Utility companies are aggressively recruiting electrical engineers, grid infrastructure architects, and field technicians just to prevent localized grids from collapsing under the computing load.
Then you look at advanced manufacturing, specifically semiconductor fabrication. The chips required to train these massive models are the most complex physical objects humans have ever built. The expansion of chip factories here in the US and globally has triggered an ongoing hiring wave for specialized clean room technicians and quality control experts.
And then there's healthcare. We mentioned direct patient care being safe, but there's a massive new hiring surge for clinical informatics roles, people who can sit squarely between the medical staff and the software engineering teams to ensure these diagnostic tools actually work safely in a live ER environment.
They are the translators. They speak both medicine and machine.
Exactly. And if you add the skilled trades to this mix, which are already facing historic organic labor shortages, the infrastructure demand from AI is essentially throwing rocket fuel on an already burning fire.
It creates this incredibly surreal economic paradox. You can look at one sector of the economy, like digital media or mid-level corporate administration, and see real corporate belt-tightening and anxiety. But if you look over at energy, infrastructure, or healthcare tech, they literally cannot hire fast enough.
Which completely invalidates the simplistic headline question, is AI destroying jobs? The only accurate answer is, which job in which sector at what level? Even within an industry that is downsizing overall, the specific departments managing AI integration are expanding.
Look at agriculture as a quiet example of this. Precision farming is exploding. Modern agricultural operations use drone arrays and localized AI models to analyze soil moisture, predict crop yields, and spot treat diseases before they spread.
I read a case study about a commercial farm in Iowa that hired an ag tech coordinator specifically to manage their automated tractor fleet and sensor networks. That is a career path that simply did not exist a generation ago. It's the same repeatable macro pattern. A new tool creates a brand new operational requirement. Even state and local governments are building out teams right now to handle the oversight and implementation of new AI safety guidelines. Policy is creating its own ecosystem of employment.
So the macro map is clear. Let's bring this all the way down to the individual level. If you are listening to this right now, regardless of your industry, what are the tangible skills that actually protect your career and give you leverage?
Let's get highly tactical. If you want to insulate your paycheck, the number one rule right now is simple. Build fundamental tool fluency. Notice I didn't say learn to code, I said learn to use these applications effectively.
This ties directly back to that Gallup data we cited in Part 1. Professionals who actively integrated AI into their workflows reported significantly higher job security and lower layoff rates than those who completely avoided the technology.
I'll be completely honest. I started forcing myself to use these tools for brainstorming, research outlining, and data sorting a while back, purely out of professional survival instinct. And what I found is that it doesn't replace my perspective, it just burns through the administrative friction so I can spend my energy on the actual execution.
You're describing what the tech industry calls the human-in-the-loop model. The software can generate raw material at an infinite scale, but it has no taste, no strategic context, and zero accountability. The value shifts entirely to the human who can look at a machine output and apply critical thinking to determine if it is brilliant or completely hallucinatory.
Critical thinking and rigorous verification are the ultimate durable skills. Anyone can press a button and get a fast answer. Very few people have the domain expertise to know if it's the right answer.
This completely redefines professional communication and judgment. The more text and data the world automates, the more valuable, concise, human-driven synthesis becomes.
And the education system is starting to pivot to meet this. Community colleges and vocational schools are rapidly rolling out these hyper-practical 12-week certificate programs. They aren't teaching abstract computer science theory. They're teaching professionals how to use AI tools directly inside fields like paralegal work, accounting, and supply chain management.
I approve. It's a brilliant approach. They are meeting the workforce where it actually is, rather than demanding that everyone become a software engineer.
The final and perhaps hardest skill to name is pure psychological adaptability.
How do you actually train someone to be adaptable, though? You can't put that on a resume.
You build it through low-stakes exposure. It's the habit of playing with new tools when you don't have to, so that when a major structural shift lands on your desk, your baseline reaction isn't panic, it's curiosity. It's about maintaining professional momentum.
That is a perfect anchor for this entire part of the conversation. The economic landscape is moving quickly, but the tools of adaptation are entirely within reach.
Exactly. The takeaway from Part 3 is that while the disruption is undeniably real, the net new architecture is massive. Specific industries are hiring aggressively, and the skills required to thrive are learnable.
Look, none of this guarantees a frictionless ride over the next few years, but acting on hard data and building concrete skills will always serve you better than freezing up over a sensationalized headline.
In our fourth and final part, we are going to tie this entire journey together. We're diving into expert timelines, upcoming federal policy shifts, and the definitive checklist for future-proofing your career.
Thanks for staying with us. We'll see you in the finale. Welcome back for the final chapter of this series. We've looked at the current corporate restructuring, the hidden data, and the net new roles being born. Now let's look at the horizon. Where do the world's leading analysts actually see this labor market heading?
The projections range wildly, honestly. It helps to hear a few different voices so you can triangulate the truth between the corporate hyper-optimism and the doomsday headlines.
Let's start with the baseline metrics. Firms like the Boston Consulting Group project that up to 15% of current U.S. roles could see intense automation pressure or elimination over the next 5 years.
That's tens of millions of workers. That is a massive percentage of the aggregate labor force.
It is. But other research centers emphasize a crucial counterpoint. Exposure does not automatically equal elimination.
Right. That is a massive distinction that gets completely lost in translation. A role can be 40% exposed to AI automation, but instead of firing the employee, the company just automates those routine, repeatable tasks and reshapes the remaining 60% around the work that absolutely requires human oversight. Task automation and job elimination are two entirely different corporate strategies.
Exactly. Even Geoffrey Hinton, the pioneer frequently called the Godfather of AI, has been very vocal about this structural shift lately.
What's his current take?
Hinton points out that while the raw technology is going to drive unprecedented corporate productivity and profits, the real danger isn't the code itself, it's our economic distribution. If the system allows all that newly generated wealth to accumulate purely at the top while entry-level pipelines dry up, you create systemic inequality. He frames it as a policy and corporate choice, not a technological inevitability.
And that perfectly matches what we mapped out in Part 2. The mass white-collar layoffs make the news, but the quieter, more insidious disruption is the freezing of the entry-level on-ramp.
Agreeing, but Hinton also highlighted a major safe harbor: healthcare. He notes that in resource-constrained sectors like medicine, efficiency gains from AI documentation and diagnostics will be used to expand patient care access and relieve burnout rather than to downsize staff.
Which is precisely what that ICU nurse told us earlier in the show. Now, let's look at the counter trends. Look at Gartner's latest research. They project that by 2027, up to half of the major enterprises currently planning massive AI-driven workforce cuts are actually going to abandon those plans entirely.
Because the software doesn't live up to the executive hype?
Exactly. It's the exact same corporate overcorrection cycle we saw with customer service chatbots. A company fires a third of its team, replaces them with an automated system, realizes the system can't handle nuance, watches their customer satisfaction scores plummet, and is forced to quietly hire the humans back.
So the disruption has a built-in rubber band effect, which is why Goldman Sachs' official timeline is so valuable. It's much more measured than the sensationalist narratives.
Right. Their macroeconomic models put full-scale enterprise adoption across the economy on a gradual 10-year curve. They estimate roughly 6 to 7% of total employment displacement over a decade.
A decade-long curve gives the labor market and individual workers actual breathing room to adapt, upskill, and pivot. It's a manageable transition, not a sudden cliff edge.
But that adaptation depends entirely on the rules of the game. Let's look at how the regulatory guardrails are finally starting to catch up to the technology.
Let's look at policy, because the legal landscape is shifting rapidly beneath our feet, even if it feels like a total patchwork right now.
It is completely state-driven at the moment. Look at California. The governor issued a major executive order specifically directing state agencies to modernize labor protection frameworks to account for algorithmic displacement.
And there is a highly watched bill working its way through their legislature right now that would mandate a strict 90-day warning period for any AI-attributed corporate restructuring. Plus, it would legally force companies to disclose exactly which automated systems were used to evaluate roles.
That is a massive shift toward worker transparency.
It is. Meanwhile, Colorado's AI Act officially took effect, making it the first state to outlaw algorithmic discrimination in high-stakes employment decisions, meaning a company cannot use an unaudited AI tool to screen out resumes or rank workers for layoffs.
But if you step back and look at the federal level, there is still zero national legislation requiring corporations to disclose AI's role in role eliminations.
Which means your legal protections, your right to transparency, and your severance guardrails vary dramatically, depending entirely on the geography of where you sit.
It is an absolute patchwork. But as one labor advocate put it perfectly, mass economic displacement from technology isn't a law of physics. It is a series of deliberate choices made by executive boards and state legislatures.
And because those choices are human, they can be influenced. Look at what the Alphabet Workers Union has been doing. They aren't trying to smash the servers or ban the software. They are aggressively organizing to demand transparency during corporate restructurings, forcing management to prove the business case rather than hiding behind AI as a blanket excuse.
Most professionals aren't anti-innovation. They just want a voice in how that innovation modifies their livelihood. They want an honest transition, not a blindside.
Which brings us to the ultimate question of this entire journey. We've covered the macro data, the policy, and the tactical shifts. Let's deliver our absolute final, unfiltered takeaways for our listeners.
Let's bring this home. 4 episodes, an incredible amount of economic data and real personal accounts. If someone is sitting in their car or at their desk right now finishing this series, what is the core blueprint we want them to hold on to?
First, acknowledge reality without panicking. AI is actively reshaping the mechanics of white-collar knowledge work, particularly repeatable administrative tasks. But never forget that a huge portion of the current layoff news is corporate theater, bloated companies using the AI narrative to keep Wall Street happy.
Second, understand where the market has absolute, unshakable leverage. The skilled physical trades, face-to-face healthcare, deep institutional judgment, and complex relationship building are completely insulated. In fact, the AI boom is throwing billions of dollars into physical grid infrastructure and data center construction.
And third, the single most dangerous move right now is staying on the sidelines out of fear or resentment. The data confirms that professionals who actively learn to build fluency with these tools are the ones companies protect during transitions.
I actually have a massive piece of personal news that proves this entire thesis. Remember my cousin from part 1, the one who got blindsided by that sudden corporate restructuring?
Yeah, of course. How is she doing?
Beaming. She just signed an official offer letter yesterday, a senior data analytics role with a major regional firm, and it actually comes with a higher base salary than the job she lost.
Oh, that is phenomenal. What shifted the needle for her?
She told me that during her final interview panel, the hiring director explicitly said that her 12-week applied AI analytics certificate was the deciding factor. While other candidates were defending their old static workflows, she walked in with a portfolio showing exactly how she uses automated workflows to accelerate data modeling. She turned a layoff into an upgrade.
That is the ultimate proof of concept for this entire series. It doesn't mean the market isn't tough, and it doesn't diminish the real financial stress of displacement, but it proves that speed of adaptation is the definitive career superpower of the modern era.
So, if you felt that low-level hum of career anxiety over the last few months, look at the checklist. Check your state's evolving labor protections, build basic tool fluency, and lean into the tasks that require deep human taste and critical evaluation. That is the real version of future-proofing.
If you are feeling overwhelmed by all of this, give yourself some grace. This is a genuinely unique, strange, transitional moment in economic history. You aren't overreacting to the friction.
You aren't overreacting, but you are also far from powerless. Both things are true at the exact same time.
Thank you so much for sticking with us through this entire investigation. It has been an absolute privilege breaking this down with you.
If this series gave you a sense of clarity or action, please share it with a colleague, a friend, or recent grad who is navigating this exact economic fog right now.
We'll see you in our next series. Until then, stay sharp, stay curious, and stay adaptable.
Maya, as always, it's been good talking with you.
Same here, Zach.
All right, everyone, take care of yourselves. Make smart choices, but don't forget to live. We'll see you in the next one.
Bye, guys.
Take care.